Welcome back, my friends, to the lab. I am your host, Bryce Prescott. And today is a different day. It's a different type of episode. I have not just riffed on an episode. Ever since I started this podcast, I have felt a desire to be very organized in my thoughts. And so I've had a lot of preparation that's gone into every single episode. If you were to go back and listen to my episodes, you'll notice that they're a combination of really deliberate, direct formatting when it comes to the things I'm presenting and teaching, as well as some riffing of my own stories. And I put a lot of time and attention into that. And I'm going to be honest with you. Today, I have tried to do that as well. But what keeps coming up for me is that it's time for me just to riff, just to share with you some of my thoughts and feelings as a podcast episode and to keep it real. You know I'm not alone in this, but it seems in the last couple of weeks, we've seen and heard a lot of things in our world that are really disheartening. You know, the Epstein files were released, and as more and more reporting comes out about who and what exactly went down in those exchanges and the people involved and everything, it is disgusting and disheartening, and it's causing heaviness. I know for myself, when I start looking around and realizing, holy shit, every institution to which I have been encouraged throughout my entire adult life to trust and to believe in is bereft with corruption. Every person to whom I thought was good as far as a political leader or even a celebrity to which I found to be interesting, there is a high possibility they are corrupt and they are very, very anti-Christian. Seeing the reality of this world and who runs it, it brings back all of these old stories from when I was a child about Christianity, about the adversary, about evil. I've had a hard time understanding the nature of evil and what it is ever since I had my own spiritual awakening not too long ago. Years, but it's still been in the span of my lifetime, relatively recent. I went through this whole period of time when I was wanting to know God myself, and the only God that I had known to that point had been through the lens of the Mormon Church. As I've shared before, I grew up an active member of the Mormon Church. I towed the line. I didn't do anything out of bounds until basically before my mission, and the only thing that happened there is that I had a girlfriend and we got a little bit too handsy. It wasn't like we were doing anything that was really bad, and that was my first taste into having to repent, quote unquote, as far as the church's guidelines for it, and then involving these other leaders of the church in my own process of redemption. And when I left the church and through excommunication, as I shared, I was forced to remove this experience of God from outside of that framework of the church and to really take it upon myself as, well, who is God to me? Who is my relationship actually with? Because if it has to go through the doors of a church, I don't have a relationship with an actual God. I have a relationship with some caricature of a being that is because of the church. And as the doctrine of the church talks about, there's, Jesus Christ as the Son of God, and then there's Lucifer, Satan, as he's known. And that Satan is the source of evil, that he has an army of demons and that they go out and tempt you and they want to rob the world of God's will and they want to force you into obedience or make you miserable through the effects of your own sin and your mistakes. And as I was going through my own mistakes and redemption, that whole story just seemed to be based out of fear. And so what it caused me to do is to go down this entire different rabbit hole relative to what actually is evil. And I arrived at a place that worked for me for a time. And instead of looking at evil as a force, I looked at it as the absence of good. It was unrealized or immature goodness. That if something was bad, it wasn't that it was inherently bad, it was just it didn't have the bigger picture. So, as an example, when you look at light, for example, darkness is not a force, it's the absence of light. So the less light that you have, the darker it becomes. My opinion of righteousness and evil was along that same spectrum, where evil wasn't a force, it was just an absence of righteousness. And that worked for me for a long time because what it did is it allowed me to look at my own mistakes as what they were, which was, in my perspective, an honest lack of understanding. It was an immature move that wasn't based in any sort of desire to hurt people or to be legitimately a bad person. It was that I was just missing in that moment a piece of the information I needed to make a better choice. Recently, I've had to readdress what evil is based off of what I've been seeing in the Epstein files and what's been happening in our world. Now, why that matters and why I wanted to bring it up here on this episode of The Lab for you as a listener is because my own process in this, I believe, is something that mirrors a very similar process to your own, in that we are forced in a decision to really ask ourselves, is this really true? Is this thing that we've been told is fact? Is it actually fact? And when you're given evidence that shows that there is actual evil in the world, and you're shown evidence that there are things out there that aren't as you thought they were, and they're far worse than you thought they were, you have a choice to either put your head in the sand or to take different action. And that's a heavy weight to lift. And I think that's why right now in our world, our culture, as we look around, that things do feel heavier. Because the illusion is crumbling. It's been said oftentimes with brevity that we live in the matrix, that this reality that we have isn't an actual reality, but like we're in this sort of simulation. And people say it and they act like they mean it, but when you really drill down to it, that's a long shot to believe that we're in some sort of like artificial intelligence recreation of an illusion and we're not actually in this world. But as things have been happening lately, that doesn't seem like a stretch at all when you consider all of the stories coming out of the Epstein files. I mean, there's talk of time travel, there's talk of remote viewing, there's talk of aliens living here, and that the elites on the upper echelons of the elites are actual like other entities from other worlds. And then when you look at the rituals and the other things they've done with children and young women, and it just makes you sit back and scratch your head and go, what the fuck is going on? And has this been going on the whole time? We've been living in this illusionary dream world, and this is really what's happening behind the scenes? It sucks. It's scary, man. I find myself in that place, and that's one of the reasons why I just wanted to come and turn my microphone and my camera on and just talk. To give myself a chance just to pour it out in hopes of connecting with you as a listener so that you can know you're not alone and looking around and going, what is going on here? Because at the end of all this, there's really only one question that applies with any sort of weight to which an individual can ask themselves. And that's, well, what can I control? Where is my agency? We all have agency. We can choose to do anything or anything we want. Now, that comes with a consequence. There's no choice that is removed from consequence, but we can at least do what we want and then deal with the consequences. And right now, we've had bad information about what's actually happening relative to our agencies and our politics and our leaders and celebrity. And so we've made decisions and choices based off of that old data, and now we have new information. And I'm sitting here going, what can I control? Anxiety is being fixated on a future that you don't know will happen. Regret is being fixated on a past to which has already happened. The only way you can have any moment of presence or peace is to live in the current moment, knowing what it is you can control, which at the time being is just the moment of now. Right now, you can choose how you think, how you feel, how you respond. I know we all have programs and things running below the surface that make it more difficult or less difficult to choose into those moments, but it's still real. We can choose how we feel. If you don't like the emotions you're experiencing right now, there is a process in order for you to change that emotional state and experience something different. And it's a crazy thought to just have this be where the rabbit hole lands. That we have stories upon stories of popular people doing horrible things to other hurtful things, satanic things. And we're presented with this new information. And literally the only thing that we can do when we get all the way down to the rabbit hole is we can ask ourselves, well, what can I control? What can I do? What is my role? And that's pretty much it. You know what the beautiful part about that question is, though? Is at the bottom of every rabbit hole. You can analyze every bit of lack that you're experiencing or every bit of disappointment that you're experiencing in any of the domains of your life. Your health and fitness, your money and your business, your personal relationships, and of course your spirituality. And you can get all the way to the bottom of that spiraling rabbit hole and it still comes to the same question. What can I control? What's my role here? What can I do about it? And one of the beautiful things about that question is that if you analyze it properly, it will bypass your shame and your guilt. Because you're at a place now where there's no moral paralysis at all. Like you are at the bottom. And you know what works and what doesn't, what you can control, what you can't. And you can choose that. Like think about that. I've talked about this a lot, that it doesn't do us well to ask why certain things happen to us. Because when we experience something we don't like and we go, well, why is this happening? Why did this do? We get into the why part, and the why question is an ineffective question because it doesn't give you an opportunity for all of the information to review. When you ask why, you only have your own perspective of it. You don't have the information of others that may be involved or situational circumstances or a number of other parts that would add in to give you the answer to the question why. You only have your own perspective to go on. And so what it means is it's a faulty question. It doesn't help you to understand anything when you ask why. But when you ask the question, does this work for me? You have everything under your control. And so, again, going back to our domains, any of the areas of our domains where we might be experiencing something we don't like, we can ask ourselves, well, does this work for me? Does my morning routine work for me? Does my current relationship work for me? Does the way that I see myself, this identity of mine, does it work for me? Is this form of sedation, this way that I'm handling the heaviness of life, is it working for me or is it sabotaging me? You know, I've shared, as I've advertised involvement in my group coaching experience every Tuesday, the lab. I've said that the simple formula of what we do in the lab is diagnosis plus integration, and that equals transformation. Now, even though we do that in a group setting and in a coaching setting, that question, that formula still applies to this moment now. Does it work for me? That's the diagnosis. It doesn't work for me. It does work for me. Okay. Well, now that I know that it doesn't work for me, what's the integration of that knowledge now into my life? What is the change to which I get to make? What is the action that I get to take that will bring me a new opportunity to ask that question again to get a different answer? Does this work for me? Now it does. See, all of this is a way to get underneath our programming so that we're not having to deal with the weight of guilt and shame when it comes to what we think we should or would be doing otherwise. And that's a very important place to be. You do not need to live in the world of should. and would. You get to live now. Of course, with how language works, there are things that we should have done. If we're looking at it from the frame of, I didn't get the result that I wanted, what was missing? Oh, that's what was missing. I should have done that. That would have provided this result. But we get really overcomplicated in the use of that, so much that it does give us shame and it does give us guilt. And we put ourselves in a position to use that language of should and would and to account for things that were never ours to account for. You know, there's a concept called toxic positivity where we are encouraged through thought leaders and authors and coaches and whatnot to take accountability for every aspect of our life. That on some level, because life is a mirror, that everything that's being reflected back to you, you've had a say in it. Well, where that gets heavy is when you're dealing with really heavy shit. Terminal illnesses, assault, theft. I mean, really gnarly stuff. And you start asking, well, I didn't create that for myself. And regardless of the actual answer to that question, it still puts us back in this place where we start to think sometimes, we victim blame ourselves. Well, if I would have done that differently, it would have been differently. I can control that. It was my fault. When we legitimately were exposed to somebody that took advantage of us. But notwithstanding, the whole point of bringing this in is that there is a requirement that we have if we're going to live with clear heads and have ownership of our lives to recognize, and this is going to sound odd, that it's not always on us, the mistakes that happen, but yet it is on us to fix them. And that therein is what we've created. We've created a scenario to which gives us an opportunity to learn how to elevate our minds, our habits, our thoughts, our skills to a place where we wouldn't ever experience that again. Some of you might be thinking, okay, I can understand that conceptually, but let's say I get beat up. Let's say I'm mugged and I just get assaulted and beat up. You're telling me I created that for myself? I'm not going to make that distinction, but what I am going to say is that in that experience, what has been created is a reminder for you that maybe there are combat skills or protective skills that you get to learn for yourself that would make a future experience like that not happen because you could defend yourself. I know that's a little bit sticky and it gets into some murky waters when you get into some of the more gnarly stuff like, well, we're talking about the Epstein file, those little kids that were brutally assaulted and were used for the nefarious means of these evil men. Did they create that for themselves? I don't want to get into the morality or philosophy of that because I can't control it and I don't know. I don't have all the information. But what I do have right now is information about myself. And what you do have is information about yourself. And so it's possible to take a formula that might seem flawed in that realm and apply it to your own. Remove the idea of being accountable for things to which you have no need to be accountable for, and truly get to the bottom of, well, what works for me? Does this work for me? What can I control? You know, I find myself in an interesting spot in my business. Over the past several years, I've really honed my skills in being an effective communicator. I'm very confident in my abilities as a transformational coach to help people to overcome the parts of themselves that are holding them back and to do as that formula suggests, to diagnose, integrate, and to create transformation. I've also gotten very good in the podcast space and understanding how to develop people and give them the freedom and the permission that they need to speak authentically their own message and in their own voice. I've gotten really good at these things. I have a high amount of confidence. My track record speaks for itself. But ever since I moved here to Scottsdale, the business of that has been something that has really struggled. I have really struggled with. And I don't like the struggle because it feels counterproductive. But when I ask myself these very questions, what works for me? What can I control? I realize in that formula, that frame of toxic positivity, I have an opportunity now to learn skills to which I weren't as good at before. And why this matters to you is because if you apply my story to your experience, there's that same opportunity for you. Here's an example. The past several years, I've done extremely well in both the coaching and the podcasting consulting space. Multiple six-figure revenue yearly allowed me to have a team of people. It's allowed me to really have a nice small business. Just a couple of people on my team and myself, but it created a life and a lifestyle to which I enjoyed. The source of my business in that time had been that I was more deeply associated with these networks to which I would go in personally. I would earn trust. And because of their proximity to me, they would think, oh, this man could help me. And I would be able to earn business that way. It was a lot easier in Utah when I knew everybody and I wasn't starting over in a new environment where I didn't have the same level of connection to people, especially entrepreneurs and successful people. But as I've been here and I'm forced to do the same thing, I'm being exposed. And so I'm creating an opportunity where I actually get to become a master at marketing. I get to become a master at messaging. I get to become somebody that when I share with you your pain back to you, it's so unbelievably accurate to you that you are inspired to work with me because I have shown and can show you that I know what you're dealing with. And that if I know what you're dealing with, when I tell you what's possible for you, that makes it more believable as well. In the past, because of the ease to which I got business, I thought I was that master already. And as I've been exposed in this way, I'm realizing while I'm very proficient and I have a lot of skills in those ways, I am not the master to which I thought I was. And that's eye-opening for me. It's humbling for me. Combining that with the weight I felt of my 50th birthday in the summer of 2025, I'm right there with you and just feeling like everything's heavy. And then doing things that make it so my energy leaks. So it's harder to overcome these things. But all that notwithstanding, the reason why I bring all of this up, to bring it back to the original question, is that we have to get better about discerning and qualifying what's happening in our lives. And then once we have that discerning qualification, to take better action. Many of the episodes of this podcast so far have talked about how indecision holds you back, creates all sorts of problems. I again bring that up, that there's something you're not deciding that you need to be deciding. There's something that you're not doing that you need to do. And the reason why I say that to you is because I'm speaking to myself when I do this too. It's like there's things that I now have allowed myself to be reminded and see I have not been doing that I need to do. And it just so happens to be that everything that's been happening politically, culturally, in our world is nothing more than a distraction. It is an undeveloped version. Whether evil is actually a force, which I'm uncertain of anymore, or it is as I described it, it's just undeveloped. It doesn't matter. It's a distraction. And we get to hunker back down, knowing what we want and why we want it, and tapping into that type of motivation that's called pull motivation. Recently, Tony Robbins was on Alex Hormozi's podcast, and it was a very dynamic and incredible interview. I highly recommend you go listen to it. But a part of this was Tony describing back to Alex the difference between motivations, that there is a push motivation, which is like a hustling, grinding. You are pushing, you are doing the thing you need to, you are working through the night, you are grinding. I don't like that word, but it's applicable here. You are doing the hard thing constantly. And 95% of entrepreneurs, that is where we spend most of our time. We are just pushing. We are pushing ourselves towards our motivation for a financial benefit. We are pushing ourselves towards fame, towards being relevant, towards being seen a certain way, towards being helpful in a certain way. But that push motivation, it's not that healthy. Pull motivation is the type of motivation where you're pulled towards something. It's like a magnet. You're getting pulled there, and it's way less energy, but it's way more impactful. And so during this time, when we're experiencing these challenges, I would encourage you to tap into your pull motivation. If you don't know what your pull motivation is, start allowing yourself to consider, well, what would really light me up? What do I really want to do? Part of that inner conversation is going to be removing lack from your equation, because when you're feeling money stress or relationship stress or whatever it is, health problems, it's very, very difficult to try to get into this benevolent space of, well, I want to do something that's bigger than me, that pulls me towards a different end. As an example, Tony Robbins' pull motivation is that he wants to feed billions of people. So he has this desire that just keeps him awake at night and pulls him towards that goal. But when we're in a place of lack, when we're worried about these other aspects of life, it's very, very difficult to snap into that pull motivation, because it always gets sidetracked through like, well, I don't have the money to do that. And my relationship this, and my health this. And so the first thing to conceptually do to understand what your pull motivation is, you have to put those on the shelf for a moment. Whether it's in meditation or journaling, whatever it is, you have to allow yourself to be removed from the need to focus on the lack. It's not a need at all. It's just a habit. And then when you get to that place where you can feel the presence of the moment, then you will be able to tap in and ask yourself, well, what do I want to be remembered for? What's the thing that I want to do? Who needs my help best? That's a beautiful moment. My friends, I'm going to wrap this up. And as I said, this was an unorganized episode where I just decided to come on here and riff, to share my heart, to go down some rabbit holes, and hopefully it's something to which you can take something you've learned here, apply it in your life, and really at that place, ask yourself, does this work for me? What can I control? And from that place, create your best life. Before I go, I'd like to remind you as well that we do a lot of this work on my weekly Tuesday lab experience. It's my group coaching environment. If you go to bryceprescott.com/thelabgroup, there is a page there that will describe to you everything you would need to know to see if you would want to be a part of this. So I encourage you to do that. Additionally, if you're getting any value from these podcasts, I need you to know this is a labor of love. I do this for free. And the only thing that I ask is twofold if you're enjoying these. The first one is that you share them. Share these episodes with people to which could use the message, the connection. And secondly, please leave me either on iTunes or on Spotify a 5-star rating and review. That helps me in search to find new listeners to keep this message going. My friends, I appreciate you today. This is The Lab. I'm your host, Bryce Prescott. And like I always say, until next time, take it a day at a time. I'll see you.